එදිනෙදා ඔබේ මුළු සිරුරටම රැකවරණයක්. සුදේශී කොඹ සබන්.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50 අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, lucky shave. Super cyclone Amphan veers past Sri Lanka but leaves floods and landslides in its wake. Double trouble. Dengue threat looms as authorities warn the public to clean up to prevent a dual disaster. On the right track, US says government's accountability and human rights efforts will pave way for future prosperity.
Advancing justice, accountability, reconciliation, and human rights will foster its long-term stability and prosperity.
Sticking to our word, rejecting debt crisis allegations, government says it always has and will manage its debt obligations. All this and much more coming up on this Wednesday, the 20th of May 2020.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9.
6997ට SMS කර රුපියල් මිලියන 3ක මුල්තැන්ගේ උපකරණ දිනාගෙන අවුරුද්දෙම කුස්සිය ටයිම් සේව් කරගන්න.
Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando. Moving on to your top stories for tonight. Super cyclone Amphan made landfall in India today, the strongest storm in 20 years to be recorded in the Bay of Bengal. Indian officials said that up to 300,000 people along the coastal areas are in imminent danger from potentially deadly storm surges and flooding. Ferocious wind and rain also lashed parts of Bangladesh, where thousands of people were evacuated to safer areas. Both countries are trying to pay heed to social distancing regulations at evacuation centers, but the bottom remains that this will be a disastrous event for the two countries already overwhelmed by the coronavirus. Super cyclone Amphan, the cyclonic equivalent of a Category 5 Atlantic hurricane, as last reported by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the US, made landfall in India today. Satellite visuals caught the tropical cyclone heading towards India and Bangladesh this morning. With 3-minute maximum sustained wind speed of 230 kilometers per hour, Cyclone Amphan on Monday became the strongest cyclone over the Bay of Bengal in the 21st century. The monster storm is also the joint most intense cyclonic storm that the Earth has witnessed so far this year, tied with Cyclone Harold that formed over the South Pacific basin last month. In India and Bangladesh, millions of people fled to shelters in a frantic evacuation, which was made all the more challenging by the coronavirus pandemic. Still, some of the shelters are only half full because of concerns about social distancing during the coronavirus pandemic. The storm is one of the most dangerous super cyclones to hit India in decades, since a cyclone in 1999 killed more than 9,000 people. That storm packed winds of more than 270 kilometers per hour, devastating many states along India's coast. Even though Amphan moved away from Sri Lanka, it still generated high rain in the country, severely disrupting 10 districts. The highest rainfall of 173.5 millimeters recorded during the last 24 hours was at the Alton Estate factory in the Norelia district. Meanwhile, a landslide in the Muskelly area in Hatton was recorded on a mobile phone. Meanwhile, vehicular movement was disrupted due to a number of roads in the Bulat Singhal area in Kalutara being inundated. Meanwhile, landslide warnings issued by the National Building Research Organisation are still in effect for the Ratnapura, Kandy, Matale, Kegol, Norelia, Kurunagala, Gaul, Matara, Colombo and Kalutara districts. Meanwhile, the Irrigation Department urged the people of the Ratnapura and Millakanda areas to be on the alert, even though the minor flood situation in the Kaluganga has receded. Meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre assures that all health measures have been taken at evacuation centres to prevent any possible spread of COVID-19.
The fishermen and the naval communities have been thoroughly advised not to venture the areas of around the country. Wind speed could also be reaching 100 to 150 kilometers per hour, and gusting speed could also be 180 kilometers per hour at the Bay of Bengal. So people need to be very vigilant with that particular situation. The water level of the Kaluganga and the Ginganga and Nilwala Ganga is receding, and the most of the inundated area that the water levels are rapidly decreasing. So the affected communities, especially the evacuated communities, have been treated with all the relief things via the National Disaster Relief Services Center, especially the disaster management units and all the government officials coping with that situation under the supervision of the district secretaries and the division secretaries and all the government stakeholders. Safe centers and the evacuations are totally managed by the Disaster Management Center. So all the measures being taken along with the COVID-19 outbreak to get all the health measures to avoid the spreading of COVID-19 at these centers.
කොරෝනා වෛරසය පැතිරීම වළක්වන්න සබන් යොදා දෑත් සෝදන්න.
Experts warns of a possible increase in the number of dengue cases following the heavy rain experienced over the past few days. With the country currently combating COVID-19, the increase of dengue infections could place immense pressure on an already pressurized healthcare sector and hinder COVID-19 control efforts as well. Health authorities have urged the public to support dengue eradication efforts by cleaning up their domestic environments.
During the last year, 105,049 dengue cases have been reported, while 19,446 cases were confirmed during the past 4.5 months of this year alone. The dengue death toll last year stood at 157. However, only 20 deaths from dengue have been confirmed so far this year. Most of the confirmed cases were found in the districts of Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara, Gaul, Matara, Ratnapura, Kegol, Kurunagala, Matale and Kandy. Health authorities warn that a spike in dengue cases can be expected with the heavy rains experienced in the past few days.
ඩෙන්ගු පහුගිය මාස 3 කාලයේ ඉතාමත් අඩු සංඛ්‍යාවක් වාර්තා වුණේ. නමුත් දැන් වර්ෂාවෙන් පස්සේ ක්‍රමයෙන් වැඩිවීමේ ප්‍රවණතාවයක් තියෙනවා. විශේෂ අවධානයක් අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා සියලුම දෙනාගේ. මේ දවස්වල බොහෝ දිනක් වැඩි වේග කාලයක් තියෙනවා නිවාසවල ඉන්නේ. එතකොට ඔබට පුළුවන් ඔබේ නිවස අවට පරිසරය ඉවත් දමන ද්‍රව්‍ය නීති ක්‍රමවේදයට ඉවත් කරන්න. නිවසේ වැහිපිල්ල පරීක්ෂා කරලා බලන්න වතුර එකතු වෙනවද කියලා. නිවස ඇතුලේ ශීතකරණයේ පිටිපස්සේ තියෙන තැටියේ ජලය එකතු කරන භාජනවල මේ ස්ථාන පරීක්ෂා කරලා ඒවා ජලය ඉවත් කරන්න.
With warnings having been issued on a possible rise in dengue cases, it has now become vitally important to keep domestic environment free from any dengue breeding grounds such as tires, coconut husks and shells, and plastic and polythene items. With health authorities currently at the front line of the country's COVID-19 battle, the responsibility now remains largely in the hands of the public to keep their environment clean and dengue-free.
සේවයට වාර්තා කළාට පස්සේ නැවතත් තමුන්ගේ වැඩ පටන් ගන්නකොටම අපේ තියෙන පරිසරය පිරිසුදු කරලා මදුරෝ බෝ වෙන්න පුළුවන් ස්ථාන තියෙනවා නම් ඒවා විනාශ කරලා දාලා වැඩ පටන් ගන්න. ඉතින් ඒ විදිහට කලේ නැත්නම් එහෙම අපිට නැවත වතාවක් ඉතා විශාල මේ ඩෙන්ගු රෝගීන් ප්‍රමාණයක් අපිට අනාගතයේදී දකින්න ලැබෙවි. ඒක මං හිතන්නේ අපිට විශාල පීඩනයක් වේවි. COVID-19 රෝගයට සාර්ථක මුහුණ දෙන අවස්ථාවක එය කටයුතු අඩාල වෙන්නත් පුළුවන් සමහර විට ඩෙන්ගු රෝගීන් විශාල ප්‍රමාණයක් ආවොත්. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා අපේ ජනතාව තමුන්ගේ පරිසරය පිරිසුදු කරලා අපිට සහයෝගය දෙයි කියලා ලංකාව COVID-19 රෝගය පාලනය කළා වගේම ඩෙන්ගු රෝගයත් පාලනය කිරීමට
මේ COVID-19 රෝගය ඩෙන්ගි රෝගය කියන රෝග දෙකම මනුෂ්‍යයාගේ චර්යාව හා සම්බන්ධයි. COVID-19 සහ ඩෙන්ගි කියන දෙකේදීම තියෙන තවත් ගැටලුවක් තමයි දෙකේම රෝග ලක්ෂණයක් වෙනවා වුණ. ඒ නිසා එයත් ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම අපිට බාධාවක් බවට පත්වන්නට පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා ජනතාව මේ පිළිබඳව ඉතාම සැලකිලිමත් වීම වැදගත් වෙනවා.
Minister of Health Pavitra Vanniyarachi stated that the COVID-19 situation in Sri Lanka is under control as no infections have been reported among members of the public in the past 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Director General of Health Services Dr. Anil Jasing has stated that specific recommendations have been provided to the Navy following investigations by epidemiology units with regard to the virus outbreak among Navy personnel. In the meantime, another batch of 466 Sri Lankans stranded in Kuwait were repatriated and sent into quarantine.
The total COVID-19 recoveries topped 584, with the confirmation of 15 more recoveries in the last 24 hours. The amount of active cases now stands at 434. 12 out of the latest recoveries confirmed were Navy sailors, which hiked Navy recoveries up to 221. In the meantime, 35 positive cases were confirmed yesterday, with all being Navy personnel, out of which 28 cases were detected at the Oliville Quarantine Centre. The Navy currently has the highest number of infections, with Colombo recording the second highest at 150. However, what is significant is that no cases have been found among civilian communities, but only from quarantine centres, and that too the majority among Navy personnel in the past 20 days.
වැලිසර නාවික හමුදා කඳවුර සහ අනිකුත් හමුදා කඳවුරු ආශ්‍රිතව පවතින COVID-19 තත්ත්වය පිළිබඳව අප විසින් 4 දිනකින් සමන්විත වසංගත විද්‍යාඥයින් පත් කිරීමෙන් අනතුරුව ඔවුන් විසින් ඒ පිළිබඳව පරීක්ෂණයක් සිදු කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ පරීක්ෂණයේ අනුව මවිසින් නිර්දේශ ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා නාවික හමුදාවට එම නිර්දේශ ඉතා තදින් ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන ලෙස. ඇතැම් ප්‍රදේශවල ඉන්න නාවික බටවින් මේ සංකීර්ණය තුල ඒ අය දුරස්ථ නිරෝධායන මධ්‍යස්ථාන වලට යවලා තියෙනවා. එම නිරෝධායන මධ්‍යස්ථානවලදී යම් පිරිසක් COVID-19 ආසාදිතයින් ලෙස හඳුනාගෙන තිබෙනවා. මේ අතර සිටිනවා නේවාසිකව ඉන්න පිරිස්, ඒ වගේම රාජකාරීවල ඉන්න පිරිස් සහ බැරැක්කවල සිටින පිරිස් ඒ ස්ථානයට අනුකූලව අවශ්‍ය පරිදි එම නිර්දේශ ලබා දීලා තියෙනවා. ඒ වගේම මේ කටයුතු වසංගත විද්‍යාඥයින් විසින් ඒ නිරීක්ෂණය කිරීමේ කටයුතු සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
සමාජය තුල මේ රෝගීන් පසුගිය සති 3කට කිට්ටු වෙන්න කාලයක් රෝගීන් වාර්තා නොවීම ගැන අපට යම් විදිහක සතුටු වීමක් ලංකාවාසී ජනතාව විදියට වෙන්නට පුළුවන් තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා සමාජය තුල රෝගය පැතිරී ගිය නැති නිසා.
Meanwhile, PCR tests targeting randomly selected communities also continued today in Colombo. Accordingly, samples were taken from vendors at the Manning Market in Petta. In the meantime, 58 people who arrived in Sri Lanka from European countries successfully completed their quarantine at the Homagama Army Quarantine Centre and were sent home today. In the meantime, 466 Sri Lankans who were stranded in Kuwait and unable to reach the country due to travel restrictions arrived at the Katunaika airport on board 2 Kuwait Airways charter flights. Accordingly, the first batch of 287 Sri Lankans arrived at the Bandaranaike International Airport last night, while 179 Sri Lankans arrived in the country this morning. In the meantime, 19,000 Sri Lankans who were detained in Kuwait have been brought back to Sri Lanka following the Kuwaiti government's amnesty period to leave the country. The Sri Lankan embassy in Kuwait had issued temporary permits for the migrant workers to return to Sri Lanka. All arrivals were sent to quarantine centres after being subjected to disinfection and body temperature checks at the airport premises.
නිෂ්පාදිත දිනය කවදත් අලුත් වටවල තේ අරගන්න.
වටවල තේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ තේ එක.
The government has rejected inferences in certain media outlets alleging that the country is facing an imminent sovereign debt crisis. In a statement released last evening via the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, it emphasized that Sri Lanka has demonstrated its commitment to honouring all debt obligations on time, even during difficult times in the past, and will continue to do so in the future while engaging with all investment and development partners.
The government has reiterated its commitment to honour its debt service obligations and rejected any inferences made through certain media outlets that Sri Lanka is at risk of falling into a sovereign debt crisis by comparing Sri Lanka with other sovereigns in similar situations. In a statement, the government says that while there have been volatilities in the yield levels of Sri Lanka's international sovereign bonds, yields during the COVID-19 pandemic period have been no different to what has been observed across a majority of frontier and emerging market economies. It added that despite such volatility, global institutional investors, fund managers and analysts have recommended Sri Lankan debt instruments for investment while remaining confident of Sri Lanka's credit quality. The government also issued a clarification that the unintended delay in holding the general elections and the submission of the government budget must not be considered an indication of policy uncertainty or procedural standoff, but a result of the health policy response to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. It stated that it was confident that any uncertainty revolving around the election issue will be resolved by the Supreme Court in the coming days. The statement highlighted the fact that the government has already introduced measures to curtail expenditure, while the delay in presenting the government budget automatically limits the space for additional expenditure this year. Further, it added that the cost of government financing from both domestic and external sources has markedly declined so far during 2020, while the government has taken proactive measures to mobilize funds from multiple sources of market-based and official sources of financing to effectively improve financing terms and conditions. The government has also stated that given the volatile market conditions across the globe, the issuance of an international bond by the government is not anticipated in the near term, thereby rendering the current yields observed in the international bond market irrelevant. It also revealed that the country is in the process of exploring swap facilities with regional central banks, while arrangements are being made for syndicate financing with identified foreign sources. Meanwhile, the faster-than-expected rebound of Sri Lanka's economy from the COVID-19 outbreak would also lend support to the government's efforts to consolidate fiscal operations in the period ahead, the statement added. The government emphasizes that Sri Lanka has demonstrated its commitment to honoring all its obligations on time, even during difficult times in the past, and will continue to do so in the future while engaging with all investment and development partners.
President's Counsel Salia Peiris today informed the Supreme Court that even though the Elections Commission postponed the general election until the 20th of June, in accordance with the powers vested in it under the General Election Act, there are no possibilities of going into polls on that day given the current situation in the country. He made this submission during the hearing of fundamental rights petitions challenging the Gazette notification issued on the dissolution of Parliament and the holding of the general election on the 20th of June.
The petitions filed challenging the Gazette notification to hold the general election on the 20th of June and the Gazette issued by the President dissolving the Parliament were taken up for the third day before the Supreme Court this morning. Accordingly, submissions were made by President's Counsel Salia Peiris on behalf of the Chairman of the Election Commission Mahinda Deshapriya and Commission member N.J. Abesekara. The President's Counsel pointed out that the Elections Commission has no legal authority to decide on the validity of the Gazette notification issued by the President dissolving Parliament. He further pointed out that therefore the Election Commission had acted according to the Gazette notification. President's Counsel Salia Peiris added that it would take 9 to 11 weeks after the green light is given by health authorities in order to hold a free, fair and safe election. Furthermore, he stated that although the Commission has decided to postpone the election until the 20th of June, as per the powers vested under Section 24 subsection 3 of the General Election Act of Sri Lanka, the election cannot be held on that day. Also making submissions in court, President's Counsel Vijayadasa Rajapaksa pointed out that the real motive of the petitioners is to deprive the voting rights of the people, to reconvene the old parliament and make it function indefinitely. He also requested the court to reject the petition sans a hearing, as the current ordeal faced by the country is not in the hands of the President or the Election Commission. Meanwhile, appearing on behalf of the Secretary to the President, P.B. Jasundara, President's Counsel Romesh De Silva made submissions saying he would file preliminary objections against all petitions. President's Counsel Romesh De Silva told the court that he intends to make a full statement on the objections tomorrow and that he will prove with evidence that the President's Gazette notification is not invalid and cannot be revoked. Accordingly, the President's Counsel will begin making submissions at 10 a.m. tomorrow.
U.S. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary, Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Alice G. Wells says that the Sri Lankan government's fostering of accountability and human rights will go a long way in establishing long-term stability and prosperity. Secretary Wells made these comments during a webinar held where she took questions from regional media personnel on a range of issues.
The U.S. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs, Alice G. Wells, held a Zoom webinar this afternoon where she faced media personnel from across the region posing questions on issues of national importance. Speaking on Sri Lanka, Secretary Wells had this to say.
Sri Lanka continues to be a valued partner in the Indo-Pacific as well. The strength of this partnership was on display following the horrific terrorist attacks on Easter Sunday 2019. When the United States offered full support to the immediate manhunt, the longer-term rebuilding and sustained counterterrorism effort. The Sri Lankan government advancing justice, accountability, reconciliation, and human rights, we believe will foster its long-term stability and prosperity.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday attacks heard evidence today, this time from senior police officials from the Colombo Central Division 1 and the Colombo Fort Police Station, who were tasked with ensuring security in the area at the time. SP Shanta Vikramasinghe, in charge of Colombo Central District 1 at the time, admitted to the Presidential Commission yesterday that although there were instructions given prior to the Easter Sunday attacks to increase security at Catholic churches, no action was taken, believing that such warnings may have created public panic.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday attacks heard evidence yesterday from head of the Colombo Central Police Division at the time of the attack, SP Shanta Vikramasinghe. Giving evidence, SP Vikramasinghe stated that on the 12th of April 2019, Colombo Central Division SSP Upali Jayasinghe had sent him a 7-page document containing information about the Easter attack. He revealed that the document contained a photograph of Zara and Hashim, information on churches being targeted, and included clear instructions to inform the relevant parish priests on the threat. He added that at 7:30 p.m. on the day prior to the attacks, DIG Lalit Patinayaka had telephoned him and informed him of the high possibility of an attack and instructed him to immediately increase security and surveillance on churches. SP Vikramasinghe stated that he had then issued instructions to all OICs in the division, which advised them to do so in a discreet manner to prevent public panic. Hence, warnings were not issued to churches in the area. The witness, however, remained silent when asked if there was a distinction between informing the public and informing the parish priests. Following this, Chief Inspector of the Fort Police, RM Sarat Kumarasinghe, was summoned to testify. The witness told the Commission that the OIC of the Fort Police Station, before going on leave, had failed to brief him on any warnings of attacks received in the past few days when he assumed acting duties. He added that on the evening before the attack, SP Shanta Vikramasinghe had telephoned him and instructed him to brief all night duty officers of an imminent threat that night. The Commission then questioned the witness whether steps were taken to increase security, including placing checkpoints at 6 main locations in the Colombo Fort area on the evening of the 20th of April. The witness responded that due to lack of sufficient police personnel at the time, only 2 checkpoints were manned. The Commission then asked the witness what his specific actions were that evening as the acting OIC of the Fort Police Station at such a crucial time. He responded that he had been on patrol around the Colombo Fort area, including visiting the checkpoints as well, but failed to provide accurate details of the checkpoints in question. Following this, the OIC of the Fort Police Station, Chief Inspector of Police Sagara Leonege, was summoned by the Commission. The Commission asked the witness whether Chief Inspector Sarat Kumarasinghe had informed him of decisions taken during a briefing held on 12th April by the Colombo Central Division SSP regarding the warnings. He responded that he had been summoned and briefed by Chief Inspector Kumarasinghe before he went on leave. However, when the Commission questioned the witness as to how the Chief Inspector could have done so if he had been on leave from 13th to 18th April, the witness admitted that his previous statement had been false.
We'll return after this short commercial break. Bear with us. Welcome back in your business news. The Central Bank's Purchasing Managers Index report for the month of April was released this week, which showed a marked decline of 5.8 index points in the manufacturing sector for the month, under review to end at an index value of 24.2. This is the lowest value recorded by the index since the beginning of the survey. Despite the drops in new businesses and expectations for activity, respondents in the financial, health and professional services, wholesale and retail trade and transportation subsectors are rather optimistic due to steps taken towards the resumption of civilian life and institutions back to normalcy.
Sri Lanka's COVID-19 hit manufacturing sector's downturn deepened further during April, with the contraction in the manufacturing PMI recording an index value of 24.2 with a fall of 5.8 index points. This is the lowest value recorded by the index since the beginning of the survey. The decline in the index was mainly driven by new orders, production and employment sub-indices, with the continuation of the island-wide curfew imposed to limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus that saw almost all manufacturing establishments closed or operating at limited capacity during the month of April. Accordingly, the new orders, production, employment and stock of purchases sub-indices remained far below the neutral threshold, with respondents in the textile and wearing apparel sector reporting reduced orders for regular products from the US and European buyers during this period. Meanwhile, employment declined mainly due to the discontinuation of some casual and temporary employees, while stocks of purchases also decreased in line with production and new orders. Suppliers' delivery time also lengthened further during the month of April, softening the decline in the overall index to a considerable extent. In the meantime, the services sector PMI declined to a record low of 29.9 index points in April, down from 32 in March, as business activities and employment fell at higher rates. Further, the business activities sub-index declined sharply to 8.6 index points, its lowest value since the beginning of the survey. The transportation subsector showed a further decline following domestic travel restrictions and a slowdown in cargo handling due to disruptions in international trade. In addition, business activities of accommodation, food and beverage subsectors also declined, attributable to domestic travel restrictions and zero international tourist arrivals during the month. Despite the prevailing demand for essential goods, business activities of wholesale and retail trade subsectors declined due to difficulties in scaling of delivery operations and the complete halt of business operations along with drops in demand for non-essential goods. New businesses and expectations for activity declined in April 2020, yet at a slower pace. However, respondents in financial, health and professional services, wholesale and retail trade and transportation subsectors are rather optimistic on future business activities, with the steps taken towards resumption of civilian life and institutions back to normalcy.
The 5-day rally seen in the Colombo Stock Exchange came to an end today as the Bourse closed 0.97% down. However, large cap stocks reported gains. Colombo's all-share price index fell 45.81 points to 4,655.22, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks went up by 0.93% or 17.49 points to end at 1,904.14. Meanwhile, market turnover was 1.5 billion rupees, with 49 stocks making gains and 113 stocks falling. Let's now take a more detailed look at how the market operated throughout the day.
Equity indices saw mixed results today. The all-share price index saw a 0.97% drop to close at 4,655 after 5 consecutive days of upward movements, while the more liquid S&P SL20 continued its upward momentum for the 6th consecutive session, closing at 1,904, up 0.93%. The activity levels were also high, with a turnover of rupees 1.5 billion. Banking sector was the highest contributor towards the turnover today, followed by capital goods and food and beverages sector. The trading activity does not come as a surprise given the weak valuations at which most of the stocks are trading in these sectors. For example, some of the blue chip counters such as Sampath Bank, Commercial Bank and John Keel's Holdings have seen drastic price drops this year, and current valuations provide an attractive entry into these stocks. Foreign investors were net sellers again today, disposing shares worth 646 million rupees, while domestic investors that have understood value are buying into the bargain. For example, 50 million shares of Commercial Bank and 12 million shares of John Keel's Holdings were absorbed by local investors within a day, reflecting that local investors are keen to capture the value in these depressed conditions. As an additional catalyst, we see the prevailing low interest rate scenario providing investors an incentive to consider equity as an attractive investment, reinforcing the positive sentiment in the markets.
Welcome back. In your international news, US President Donald Trump has said he is taking hydroxychloroquine to ward off coronavirus despite public health officials warning it may be unsafe. Speaking at the White House, he told reporters he started taking the malaria and lupus medication recently. Experts have warned the public against self-prescribing the drug, rather claiming that there is no evidence hydroxychloroquine can fight coronavirus, while regulators doctors have warned that the drug may cause heart problems. Trump states that COVID-19 frontline workers of USA are also taking the drug. 73-year-old Trump, who is tested daily for the virus, said he had asked the White House physician if it was okay to take the drug, and the doctor has given him the go-ahead to use if he likes it. Weeks ago, Trump had promoted the drug as a potential treatment for the virus, but subsequent studies found that it was not helpful. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. Good night.